Hey guys, this is Jim from Bronzeville Comics with another video today. We're going to look at the career of the great comic book artist, George Pérez. Hey comic book community, this is Jim from Bronzeville Comics and we're here with another video. Today's video, we're going to react to the recent news from George Pérez that has affected the comic book community very, very hard, in that he has inoperable pancreatic cancer, is choosing not to undergo either chemotherapy or radiation treatment, and the prognosis is about 6 to 12 months left to live. Pérez has been struggling with health issues recently. Diabetes, which has caused him to lose the sight in one eye, which effectively forced his retirement from the comic book community and his artistry, because he wasn't able to see as well any longer. And now we get this very sad news. So I'm just gonna, George Pérez is my favorite comic book artist, period. He was such an influential force as I was growing up, and any time he jumped into the comics I was reading, or he started doing art on a comic book that I wasn't reading, I picked it up. It was always exciting to see what he brought every month, every time he had a new book, and just a thank you, a huge thank you for being such a huge part of my childhood, my young adulthood, my comic book collecting, my passion for this hobby, and the amount of work that he put in, the amount of care that he put into everything that he drew. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was done just to meet a deadline. You could see that he really cared about the characters that he was writing about. So I put together a top 10 list plus one. I had to include an extra book. And these are the covers, but they also reflect the stories. And that is something that really was an important part of Pérez's career. The kind of number 11, the honorable mention on the list, is Infinite Crisis number 5, the B cover. The A cover was done by Jim Lee and has Jaime Reyes' Blue Beetle in his first appearance. That's a great cover. But this cover on this book, which is a key book because of the first appearance of Jaime Reyes in the Blue Beetle costume, has the Earth 1 Superman fighting the Earth 2 Superman, and Earth 2 Superman really giving it to the present-day Kal-El. Just the dynamic quality that Pérez brought to this cover, the power you could see just coming off the page almost, and right at the reader. And that was a lot of what his art was, just grab the reader. You saw that cover and you had to see what was inside. You had to have the cover and you had to see what great stuff he had in store for inside. And number 10 on my list, I'm going to put an unusual selection. It's Wonder Woman number 46 from September 1990. And this, Pérez took over the reins of Wonder Woman after Crisis on Infinite Earths, when they rebooted the character, redid her origin story, redid her supporting cast. Two members of the supporting cast were Julia Capitelis, who was an archaeologist and history professor, and her daughter Vanessa. And in this story, Vanessa has a friend who commits suicide. And you could see there's a very somber cover that Pérez used for this particular book, and that oftentimes the best stuff he did was the most heartfelt, and the ones that really resonated with a reader more than just superheroes smashing each other. That's why I really enjoyed this particular book, and it's a book that stayed with me. At number 9 on the list is New Teen Titans Annual number 3, which is the final chapter of the Judas Contract, in which, in the New Teen Titans, now Pérez redefined the book with Marv Wolfman, took the Teen Titans characters and made them the most popular book at DC, and really reinvigorated the characters. Terra joins the Titans. Changeling, who, as he was known at the time, now everybody knows him as Beast Boy, as was his original comic book name, falls in love with her, falls hard. But Terra is a spy for Deathstroke, and there's a lot more to the story, a much darker side in the Deathstroke-Terra relationship. And so when the Titans finally find out that they have a traitor in their midst. That's what hits here in New Teen Titans 3. And you can see kind of his cover tells part of the story real quickly in the dynamics between the characters. Coming in at number 8 on my list, Avengers Volume 2, number 6 from July of 1998. Pérez rebooted the Avengers title, and this is another one. This is the Avengers versus the Squadron Supreme, or the Squadron Sinister, and one of these classic characters coming at each other covers that we saw like in Avengers, or I'm sorry, X-Men 100, and we saw throughout the Silver Age and the Bronze Age, just a common thing where the two clashing forces on the cover headed right towards each other. But Pérez turns it a little bit, and it's not straightforward as often it was, and it's coming at us. And Pérez was the master at multiple characters, putting, you know, the more characters he could fit into a cover or on a page, it seemed like he really enjoyed that challenge. And his line work was so superior that it really did a great job here. At number 7 on my list is another installment from Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman number 22 from November of 1988. Now, some of the Wonder Woman covers from this run that get more acclaim are the Brian Boland covers because they're good girl art. But Pérez, when he drew Wonder Woman on the cover, she was gorgeous, beautiful, but he didn't draw her as being overly sexualized. Really, he brought out the power and the beauty of this character in these sleek lines that he gave her, this feeling of weightlessness as she's flying through the air, and the feeling of joy of her being this character. And you saw that cover, you really were compelled to it, drawn to it. And he did such a wonderful job on this Wonder Woman reboot. Wonder Woman had been a fairly stagnant character throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s. DC had tried a lot, but they weren't sure what to do with her. And I think part of the problem was they didn't know how to write female characters. And Pérez had a little bit of a knack for that. It was his first real long-term attempt at writing a book as well as penciling it, and he did a great job. At number 6 on the list, Infinity Gauntlet number 3 from September of 1991. And this is one of those types of covers that Pérez did all the time where the characters are coming at us. And there are so many characters that if you were looking at this book for the first time, you had to stop and actually make sure you looked through. And every character on that cover was given time. It was given, was highlighted. It wasn't just like they were sketched in the background and you kind of figure out who was that. They were all, he spent the time to really make sure that each individual character on the cover got their due. And he penciled the first 3 issues of Infinity Gauntlet. We all know that story from the MCU movies. And then he was, Ron Lim did most of the pencils for issues 4, 5, and 6. I believe Pérez still did the covers. But that was that's my favorite cover from that particular run. At number 5 on the list is Avengers 181. Now, this is a key because it's the first appearance of Scott Lang, although he is not Ant-Man in this book. This book is from March of 1979. And what I like about this, what was exciting about picking up this issue as a kid, was the idea of, like, who are going to be the new members of the Avengers. And he just stuffs this one room with all of these characters. Now, Pérez had a fairly long run on Avengers before he went over to DC and did the New Teen Titans. And, you know, there's so many great covers in here, including the first appearance of Taskmaster and the Korvac saga he did. He didn't get all the covers on it, but this one I love because there was always, I remember friends and I, we were talking about who's going to be the new Avengers team. And there was always excitement. What's going to be the new lineup? What new characters are they going to introduce? Who are they going to keep? What favorite characters are no longer going to be in the series? And what new characters are we looking forward to? That was a lot of fun. At number 5 on the list is Justice League of America 197 from December of 1981. And this is the final part of a 3-part crossover. The annual Justice League Justice Society team up as they're opposing the 7 Soldiers of Victory. I'm not sorry. As they're opposing the Secret Society of Supervillains. Wrong alliteration there. the wrong SSOV, Secret Society of, that's SSOSV as opposed to SSOV. Anyway, and this with the Golden Age Superman with the gray hair in the temples in the center, and characters from both the JLA and JSA in the foreground. Again, that action coming towards the reader of the book. Pérez was kind of a last-minute replacement on Justice League of America after longtime penciler Dick Dillon suddenly died of a heart attack. And Pérez took over and finished the previous year's JLA, JSA crossover. He didn't do that many JLA books. He did the crossover the previous year with the New Gods. The classic Dark Side cover was one of those. And then he came back and did the origin of the Red Tornado retold. And then he did this crossover. He did also contributed to issue number 200, and he did some other covers along the way. But as Justice League is my primary book growing up, it was such a... I'm sorry, I'm uncomfortable here. It was such a privilege to have George Pérez bring something new and fresh and exciting to this book. I always liked Dick Dillon as an artist, but he did every single issue of the Justice League of America that I read, you know, basically for almost a decade, from like 1972 until 1980. So that Justice League run, George Pérez, was really great. At number 3 on our list is the book that started it all, New Teen Titans number 1 from November of 1980. This was where Pérez really established himself and set himself apart. Along with writer Marv Wolfman, who he'd worked with a little bit previously at Marvel, Pérez and Wolfman were given the unenviable task of relaunching the Teen Titans. Now, the Teen Titans had been a book in the 1960s with Robin, Aqualad, Wonder Girl, Kid Flash, and it had gone through incarnations. And then it was canceled in, I believe it was 1973. It was brought back again for a handful of issues and then was canceled a second time. So this was really a project that was dead in the water, and nobody at DC expected the book to succeed. But Wolfman and Pérez reinvented the characters. They kept some old characters, Robin, Wonder Girl, Kid Flash. They brought in a character who had appeared a couple of times in the book previously, who was an established character. That was Beast Boy, who they renamed Changeling. He had been in the Doom Patrol originally. And then they created 3 brand new characters. And these characters are still vital characters to this day. We've seen them both in the Teen Titans Go cartoon, the Teen Titans cartoon before that, the Titans HBO Max series, and that's Starfire, Raven, and Cyborg. Although Cyborg we see in Doom Patrol, not so much in Titans. But the sad thing about New Teen Titans number 1 is it's not as big a book as it should be because they were given a preview in DC Comics Presents number 26. What DC did at the time, they did it with several properties. Blue Devil, Captain Carrot, All-Star Squadron, I think Night Force, New Teen Titans. They had a premiere sandwiched in an existing book. In this case, for the New Teen Titans, it was DC Comics Presents number 26. DC Comics Presents was a book that every issue was Superman teaming up with somebody else. So 26 was Superman and Green Lantern, had a classic Jim Starlin cover. And these characters, their first appearance for Cyborg, Starfire, and Raven is in this little tiny corner of the book rather than in issue number 1 of their own series. And this is a great cover by Pérez because the characters, again, are flying at the reader. There's something bold about the characters and exciting, and it makes you want to pick up the book. Now, when this book came out, I was, 14 years old. I was in high school, a freshman in high school, and I was trying to get, DC Comics Presents was a comic on my pull list, so I had that book, and I liked the characters. I had always collected Teen Titans earlier, and I wanted to collect the new series, but the supply outweighed the demand. I had to actually get issues 1 and 2 at a comic convention a few months after they came out. Fortunately, I got them, and I still have them in my collection in high-grade condition, but this was a book that changed everything. Very similar to the X-Men over at Marvel. The new X-Men, because X-Men had been left for dead and were reinvented with some old characters and some new characters Same thing with Titans. Same sort of formula as teenage characters. And what really worked was they had bold storylines with great villains, and the characters went in their own direction. They evolved. And one of the things that I really liked about the way that Wolfman and Pérez approached the Titans was the family aspect of it. That these characters really kind of grew up together. Three of them had an ongoing relationship from when they were younger, and now you brought in Beast Boy and these other newer characters, and it really was, the amalgam of Wolfman and Pérez was just magic. Perez's art was spectacular on every single issue, and this was a book that throughout high school I would look forward to getting the next issue. It was so exciting. So Teen Titans, that run is one of my all-time favorites, and just great storytelling throughout. Just classic storylines. We talked about the Judas Contract as a Brother Blood, Trigon, Blackfire, the reintroduction of the Omega Men. So many great stories therein. I'm going to go to number 2 on my list, and I'm picking one issue from the miniseries, and that's Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7, The Death of Supergirl, this classic cover that's been copied, homaged so many times. And I picked this issue out of the 12. Crisis on Infinite Earths, as a whole, was George Perez's masterpiece. Also done with Marv Wolfman. There was no better team at that point in time to reinvent the DC universe. It was DC's 50th anniversary, and their continuity with all the multiple Earths had become somewhat confusing. So DC decided to simplify it by creating this Crisis on Infinite Earths, because the Justice League, Justice Society team-ups every year were Crisis something. Crisis on Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth X, in time. There was always a crisis. And so the Crisis on Infinite Earths, from the first issue with the wraparound cover and all the characters, Pérez was able to incorporate into that miniseries, 12-issue series, almost every character of note that had ever appeared in DC Comics. From, Superman to Zatara, from Fireman Farrell to Prince Rahman, from Anthro to Commandy, the Legion of Superheroes, the Justice Society, the All-Star Squadron, obscure heroes from the Golden Age and from the Silver Age. Everybody was in that book. And what was great was every issue to look for who was going to be in it, which characters were which, trying to figure out who everybody was, and also how this was going to change the DC universe. This was a high-stakes event. Mostly in comics up until then, you had your occasional deaths, but you knew the characters were coming back month after month because that was their ongoing series. You knew they were going to keep certain characters, but they certainly reinvented them. And the death of Supergirl really hit hard. There was something very emotional about that. I remember reading that at the time as a kid, and I wasn't a huge Supergirl fan, but the way that it impacted every other hero. And I had collected Supergirl. I think I have the entire run of her 80s series, and it was really heartbreaking when she died, because you almost were in disbelief that they were actually going to kill her off, even though the way that DC set the plans in motion shortly thereafter, where they wanted Superman to be the only survivor of Krypton, that didn't last long. Things change over time. At least he wasn't blue. Is that there's a finality to it. That this character, who was such an important part of DC and Superman lore, was gone. And that was it. That was final. That was something really heartbreaking about that. And that's why I chose this particular issue. You also have, on the sides of the cover, so many different characters. The Justice League and the Legion of Superheroes and everyone who is kind of paying tribute to the passing of Supergirl. Not to mention number 8 would be the death of the Flash, and then, the death of everybody else. And characters that, from Earth 2 that we would never see again. But number one on my list, and this is because I think, for me, this is my all-time favorite single-issue story, self-contained story. And that is New Teen Titans number 38 from January of 1984, Who is Donna Troy? Wonder Girl had a complicated history. And when she was introduced as a member of the Teen Titans in the second appearance in Brave and the Bold, she really didn't exist. The Wonder Girl comics in Wonder Woman, that character was Wonder Woman as a girl. There was no separate character. So they just plucked this character out of nowhere and put her in the Teen Titans. And she was a mainstay throughout all three incarnations of the series. And it was hard to explain her origin. It's gotten more complicated even since then. But this story, it's a wonderful mystery story. And it's also very heartfelt. Because Robin, who's been friends with Wonder Girl forever, there's never any romantic link, decides he's going to use his detective skills to figure out what her past is. The origin always is that Wonder Woman saved her from a burning building as a baby and took her to Paradise Island. Well, was there any family of theirs left behind? And so we take this journey with Dick Grayson and with Donna Troy, and through her comic book history, and so many layers are added to it. And at the end, there's a wonderful emotional payoff that really hit me at the time, and hits me every time I read it. I think this is just a great issue, and it's not a huge multi-part crossover with 40 different characters on the cover. That's not what this is. This is a more personal story, and if you look at this list, there's a mix of that. There's a mix of these huge crossover events that Pérez was great at, and also these human stories that he was equally adept at. And so that's number one on my list. That's my top 10 list. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorite books are. And again, to George Pérez, we send the best wishes out to him and his family in this difficult time. And just want to let you know that you're appreciated. And that the work that you did, and it was clear that you really put your heart into it, really meant so much for so many of us in the comic book community. I know you've probably heard that outpouring of love. Those of us that watch other YouTube channels and look at people on Instagram, it's clear that this is one of the all-time greats. And he's had just an amazing career, one that I'll never forget, and so many books that are in my personal collection that are going to stay with me and that I will absolutely cherish. So until next time, guys, enjoy your comics and really enjoy your George Pérez comics.